Well, I guess we're officially recording now for our very, very first soft launch. What are we calling it? Bohemian Swarm? Or I don't know what we're calling
Yeah.
this. Yeah, okay, so let's just use that for now, right? So hello everybody. I am joined with you,
Jess McDonald. Hi.
and
Thomas.
I'm Thomas Ott. Yes, we are currently colleagues at Worldwide Technology. However, this podcast is not affiliated with Worldwide Technology or any of our employers or whatever it is. This is just a bunch of two crazy people, maybe even more later on, talking about AI and what's kind of going on in the marketplace, kind of from what we're seeing as practitioners, right? Would you say that's
Yeah.
correct, or did I leave out any type of indemnification clauses here?
Well, yeah, you did actually, because while this is not a WWT podcast, come on, we're not just colleagues. You're my work husband,
Oh,
right?
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. For everybody who doesn't know, I got married one day at work. I didn't know it. So, but yes.
I'm not your either, Priya. You know you're gonna have her on the
Yeah,
show.
yeah, I've had multiple work wives. I'm still technically, I think, married to them, but we'll see. I
All
guess
right,
that's a good
ladies.
thing. That's a good thing,
And
right? I guess people like working with me, so
yeah, Stella trained you well. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we
So
just want to have we're dealing with tons of new topics, all building new things and getting access to a lot of really cool information. I think just from what we do and what we're doing, and I think it's
yeah,
just inside the mind of uh, those on the front line who are just also kind of figuring this out,
yeah.
processing, and want to bring you all in and yeah, talk about it,
There
think about it. That's it.
there was, I think, for me, based on what we were doing, right? I think remember there was that funny sketch where it was about, the difference between a boss and a leader, right? And so the boss is whipping the people as they're pushing the cart forward, and the leader's in the front pulling the cart, right? And then it was something like the introvert with AI was like a fighter jet, right? And just by
Yeah.
himself, right? By themselves. And that little meme kind of really solidified a lot of what I'm seeing happening in this space that we're in right now, right? I think that there's a lot of creative people and maybe technically minded that are using AI in a really positive way. I mean, of course, the dealing with creative, the copyrights and artwork and all those different things are definitely a hot button item, and I'd like to talk about that at another time, but not today. So, what are your thoughts about the jet fighter and the introvert? Because I feel that way. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to share my screen, but I don't think I have the settings yet. I'll drop you it if you want to show them.
oh,
It's
sure, yeah.
yeah, it's right here. I'll just drop it to you in Discord. It's a visual, which I feel
Hmm.
is very accurate for right now, because the whole everything's changing, right? Like AI is not like a new tech product; it's like a system, like integrator, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, introverts with AI are all of a sudden it's like you don't necessarily have to have the expertise, right? Because if you can accurately harness AI, and you have methods and rigor and governance even to how you do analysis in the systems, all of a sudden it's like you can be doing analysis and build yourself the most advanced, most knowledgeable
Hmm.
physics expert in the world, right? Or whatever it is that you need. You can build the skill set that you need and work on these teams with agents, like a lot of stuff that we've been doing too, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
that visual, I think, yeah, says it.
I use when we first started getting Claude. I'm not sorry, not Claude. Copilot. Um, I started using the heck out of it, building agents and building prompts, right? And then in between, and that was only like 6 months ago. And in between that time, Claude really integrated some form of their AI agents into it and created skills. And all of a sudden, you really didn't need to write out long prompts. You just needed to write out a lot of skills, which is really a testament to the fact of the reasoning models, right? What was it? It was in 2023, 22 at my old
Yeah,
firm when we just released kind of like the initial fine tuning open source product to let you take large language models and then kind of reduce, quantize them and so forth. And they were
yeah,
just large language models. They were interesting, but the reasoning wasn't in there yet. And once the reasoning models came out, it just changed the whole game, and it really set the stage for these AI agents. And for some strange reason,
Also,
I'm trying to share my screen, but it's not letting me do it.
also like Groky Grok is king, right? Because of his
Yeah.
reasoning. You know, it's like they took that like I know I've like talked about this a million times, but it's like they took that extra step, right? Did the whole training, and then like used like their initial Grok, right? Groky Grok because it sounds better.
Groky Grok, yeah.
That's what I
yeah, I call it Groky Grok too. Yeah, I call it Groky Grok.
It says Groky Grok. So, and then they used him. They built him into like a, you know, and he cleaned his own like initial past data and retrained on it causally, right? It's like that reasoning, you know, how you don't have to explain things to him; he can just get it. He can, you know, that the causality that so different, right? It's like not randomly just like trying to get the model to fit, right? Not randomly trying to balance between 0 and 1. It's like actually using like that which like builds the model and like accurately like weighting each of those, you know, control variables.
You mentioned causal, right? And so for the people that might be listening here, right, this may be the first time that they've heard of causal modeling or something along the line, right? And I know, and when I met you, you were like really, you know, you have a strong background in causal analysis. What does that, you know, why do you like Groky Grok or Groky Grok, right? Because of the causal modeling. Like, what is that? What is causal modeling, and how is that actually really like piquing your interest? Like, why is it important to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I have a different story to tech, right? I know we didn't really do our intros, but like I started out on like Wall Street and then went back, like applied econometrics, and then essentially was doing a lot of, you know, in finance, algo, future, quant building, right? And then I got in from there, I segued into NGO work and doing like impact assessments and predictives and outcome analysis. So like the reason I'm so obsessed with causal and what causal is like it's like attribution, like meaning like we don't like cause and effect. Like did the branch fall off the tree because like there was a storm last night, or because someone like, you know, used a chainsaw and cut it down? If you go look at the branch, you probably can get some clues, right, as like what caused it to fall down, right? So like when we talk about like causality, that means like we're mathematically certain, right? We're not saying like, hey, this happened, so it could be, it's likely that there was a storm last night, right? Or it's likely that whatever happened. It's like you're actually mapping out the entire environment and calculating what actually affects that, right? What causes a branch to fall, right? What causes, you know, a child to be able to read or like to be able to get reemployed? You're looking at like the human, like behavioral, right? Or things that are harder to measure, like, and you're essentially using mathematics, right, to calculate and derive the drivers of that, right? So it's like it's a different way of doing it. It's more complicated, but in econ land, we've been doing that since Adam Smith days, just statically. But I'm obsessed with that, right? And why I really got into like AI is because doing that, right? It's not a question of like whether or not we can do it. We've been doing it for over 100 years, right? How do you think like the Fed predicts inflation, blah, 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 right? It's about now, can we harness AI, right? And decide what these outcomes are, whether that's like better health for our population, right? Or like environmental sustainability, or like a society in which like everyone can actually like pay their bills and have like a high quality of life, right? If you can define end goals, we can mathematically turn it around, right? And that's what we've been doing.
Right.
And that's what we're doing now, that analysis that I'm doing, right? Same thing.
So you're taking a more statistically driven approach, right? To like where if I remember back from my statistics days, right, you would have t-tests and you would put different populations in there, right? And kind of the way maybe like the healthcare industry does their analysis to make sure their drugs actually work, right? The cause and effect.
Right? Every dollar that USA used to give out and stuff like that, like you know, it used to always NGOs, medical, academia, they all use these like rigorous methods, right? So the question is like, why don't we use them in governance? It's not a question if you know, and now with AI, it's not such a small subset of the population that has skill sets. Like we're building these agents, we're building these frameworks, and we're building these capabilities. So it's like if you want to derive, like if a policymaker is saying like, hey, like we want to do XYZ this policy,
Right.
like we can mathematical playbook, right, to achieve that with certainty. And how do you monitor it? How do you know when it's going off the rails, right? So it's like I see AI as almost like we've had a lot of years of the country kind of backsliding, right, since like the 60s and the 70s and things that we
Oh,
had,
be
like,
careful! You might cause a political storm here, right? But
well, I mean, the data, yeah, I'm happy to talk about it,
well, the
right?
data, yeah, right. So we have been collecting data, right, and various
Writing about
trends are established, right, and you're right, and I think I'm coming from the AI world, not from the causal side of things. I'm coming from more from the probabilistic side of things, right? Which to me AI was always so right. So when machine learning, right, was really kind of came out, it was always said that it was a combination of a little bit of statistics and computer science and where you already have a set of data and you use the algorithm to fit or without overfitting an algorithm or model to the data, and then you use that model to predict on the unseen data, right? So that was the idea, to say, hey,
that's the same
right,
thing,
but
right?
that's not necessarily
How do you
cause and
know?
effect.
Yes, it is though, right? Because if you get that accurately, how do you know if your model's overfitted, right? You run you do correlations, but that's not going to tell you, right? That's
Well,
when
yeah,
you
that the trap of correlation and
use
causation,
that
right? Yeah.
collinearity, right? So that's
Hmm.
something where it's like, hey, like all these things have a relationship with what we're trying to achieve. But if we include all of these things, right, we are going to add that skew, right, that bias or whatever. So it's
Right.
like
Right.
ultimately, if you can measure outcomes, you can predict them. And if you can predict outcomes, whether they be, right, like hope, resilience, grit, economic self-sufficiency, whatever that is, right, and you can predict it, that means you're predicting the future, which means you have a chance to change it. So what's cooler than being a matrix bender, right? Because you can predict the future, you can change it for the better, with some intention. You're not
So,
always going to get it right. It's not a perfect linear path, right?
so
But
this is so you think that the
that's,
the Grok model, or the Grok model, or we're affectionately calling it, is better trained to do causal and effect, or compared to,
yeah,
let's just say,
because they
OpenAI and
did
Claude,
causal
or
retraining. Yeah, because they did causal retraining, like Grok has better discernment, right? So like everyone's like, why would they do that? Why would they spend the like? I mean, I don't even know what they cost them, a couple hundred million, right? We should check that. But it was a huge amount of money. But what really cost them was the time delay in like the coding, right? So Claude Cowork and blah blah blah. And sure, Elon got Cursor, and they'll be fine. But like, why would you take that risk, right? Why would you take that risk for something like causal retraining right now? You have to do it at the base layer if you're going to do it, because causal, like that discernment, that reasoning, it essentially makes it a lot more human. I think it's a lot more
right.
human-like because it's a lot more accurate. It has like far fewer hallucination rates, but over time that compounds, right? So now
Mm-hmm.
open way cheaper, right? If you run it off of growth, like,
So,
and over time.
do you know of any open weighted models that are like Grok? I mean, I know there's
Like,
been a lot of
I mean,
talk about the Chinese open weight models, Kimi 3 coming out, which
me
supposedly the
too.
OpenAI, yeah.
Yeah. So we've been like, and part of that analysis I've been doing like recently, right, is like looking at Kimi 3 versus Grok versus Claude
Mm,
versus, and all the models are like, most of the models, the successful models, they're successful because they're the best at something, right? Some
mm-hmm.
workload, some task, right?
Yeah,
But it's
right. And the trick is figuring out which is which, figuring out which one you need for the specific task. Because right now there's a plethora of, I mean, what is it, millions of models now on Hugging Face and elsewhere, and new ones, new foundational models coming out like every week. It's just nuts. How do
as
you
there
keep
should
up?
be, though.
Right.
It's
How do
like
you
that
keep up?
NVIDIA open ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you want it like that. Like you want to make the barrier to entry for these things, especially right now in history, right?
Yeah.
When like once AI begins to scale, like it's anybody's game, right? We will lose
Yeah.
control, right?
Yeah.
But this
Yeah.
base level, like we want to spend more time here. We want to have like some kid who's like 13 in his, in his computer science lab
Yeah.
and home with his dad, building the next like amazing one. Because
Yeah.
if we all do that, right, it's almost like the agents that we've been building and sharing with each other and stuff like that too, and then iterating off the top of them.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
group think. It's like that's what Jensen's thinking. It's collective ecosystem of group think, and then you take the best and the best, and you because
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I love. You spoke of NVIDIA. I mean, I'm a huge fan of their Nematron models, right? And currently right now, I'm trying to build an agent swarm in Hermes using a couple of the smaller Nematron models, and I'm just right at the beginning. But you know what I mean. You orchestrate out your swarm. You could say one is the brain and one is the coding agent, and so you figure out the right models to use for each, and then the coordinates, and you build your applications, right? I mean, like I have been experimenting. And just actually today, I pushed my last update for my hydrology or stream gauge flood forecasting open source repo, right? And I'm going to post about it on LinkedIn. But I mean, I actually used Claude to break through some log jams. I just didn't have the time, with work and with everything going on. And I said, well, I need to get these things done. And I just said, okay, well, let's use cowork. And I put in a plan. I said, here's what I needed to do. Here's what I need to do the back checks. And I went ahead and did that. I mean, did it take a few hours? Of course, but that would have been weeks of me plugging away at the non-existent hours that I have in the day to do this, right? So there is such a huge benefit to using these agents that I think the majority of the world has not fully realized that. Of course, we hear about the bad actors using agents and fable and mythos to break into potentially break into cyber security areas, right? But I think as far as a productivity and an efficiency and a quality of life thing, I believe that we haven't even scratched the surface yet. And you're right. There's going to be some 15-year-old girl or boy that is sitting, in her room or his room with a Mac or a Lenovo, Windows machine, and they're going to hack together something amazing, and it's going to change the world. Just look at OpenClaw.
Exactly. Right. And then so it's like that's why, like, I know we were going to talk about data centers, but it's like that's why one of the reasons, like, I think universities have to be like we're shifting, right? It's like all this information is now free. Like you don't necessarily need you don't have to go to a university anymore to gain an education, right? If you're studious, you're industrious, you can build all the best experts in the world and teach yourself whatever you want in any format that you want, right? Podcast, YouTube, whatever, games. Right? And kids are doing that because they're creative but to me, that means universities, they're already ingratiated into local communities, right? They already run programs, they're already well embedded, and then it's what's their role, right? These institutions, what's their role? Well, they also have SMR programs, right? Nuclear programs, and have a public trust. So, and they have access to our grant funding.
You know what? You're talking about another thing. I think you're talking about another potential shift in the future, which we can talk about another time. The role of local colleges. For instance, I'll give an example. So my son is enrolled in engineering school, and he wanted to do a minor in data science. And so we've been talking back and forth about, should he even bother doing data science, because these large language models and agents are all kind of doing it really, really well and super fast. Then the question becomes, do you want to learn how to do it just for knowledge to check the machine, right? Or do we even need to check the machine in the future? Will there be checks and balances? But then it comes down to, do we want to learn these things just to make ourselves better humans? And so this is an interesting thing, right? Because it costs money, right? And it does.
Right? Yeah. We have to know the methods. So it's data science, it's how we learn it. Instead of being able to execute, right, mass data science projects at scale, right? It's we need to know the best and most rigorous and best the different methodologies of doing it, so you can always lead your AI, right?
That's what's happening, right?
Has some discernment. It doesn't have a human's level of discernment, not even freaking close.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you this. This is going to age me, but this was my calculator from engineering school, right? And and we had to learn logarithmic. We read log tables, and then everybody was like, oh, these calculators are going to make kids dumb. But no, they ended up turbocharging the kids, and that goes back to that I'm sorry, I can't share that, but that goes back to that, meme where
Overlay
the
it.
ADHD introvert, with AI. That's what's
Yeah.
happening, and that's what I think is going to happen, right? But anyway, that I wanted
Happening, they're
to.
starting businesses, they're becoming billionaires, right? Millionaires, all this stuff. It's fantastic, right? But it's also calling out the fact that like our system is like very antiquated. It's groaning, right? So it's like we need some intentional leadership, not just around like governance and AI and guardrails and stuff, but it's like we need institutions to be leading, right? It's like if we allow
Yeah,
data center to be done by like the for-profit, they're not going to get done as we're seeing,
I
right?
I was, yeah, and this is a great segue. This is a great
They don't know
segue,
how
and so the data. So data centers were never really on my radar when it was more CPU based, right? So AWS,
to.
I've been on AWS for many years for my personal projects, and I always went to two regions, North Virginia or Oregon, right, east or west, and I never really thought too much about it. And then the GPUs were creeping in, and then when I was working at H2O, we sold this product called driverless AI, which was GPU enabled, and it allowed to do parallel training of models, and it was great, right? And so we were spinning up more and more, GPU instances and so forth. But then now, especially with generative AI or this realm that we're dealing with right now, and all these models and reasoning models and agents now, it the need for them is there, and we've seen a huge pushback, right, from the public on that. I mean, there's a big huge. I can get off on a tangent, right? Especially flock cameras and on all the surveillance state stuff, right? But this is not a conspiracy podcast. But but the need for the data centers is there, right? Like there was an article, since my background is in civil engineering, there was an article, and I stay on top of
Yeah.
construction and stuff like that. There was an article, and I think it was maybe from the Engineering News Record. I don't remember. It was saying that if you took out data center construction from the U.S. economy now, the construction industry would actually be negative, not drastically negative, but negative. So it would be contracting. So right now, the
So
game in town in construction is data centers, right? And then you hear the public saying, well, we hate data centers. They make a lot of noise. They use up a lot of our water. They're destroying the fabric of communities because they're plopping them down in different spots, right? Like if I was, and I shared that Axios article with you,
plus like the runoff, right? The radiation and everything else,
and consumption of fossil fuels, right? Greenhouse gases, like in the Axios article, which was from October 29 of last year, it was saying stuff like, Texas has over 405 data centers that are currently operational, and Virginia has 633. And so what they're trying to do is, and they're planning another 442 in Texas, and like I think Grok is, was a what do they call it? Colossus is I think in Texas,
acid.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're burning fossil fuels, natural gas, right? So
But they're also working with like Emory, right? Like, and
mhm,
they're doing the SMR,
mhm,
and they're also doing like the batteries and the solar. Like they're doing the renewables. Like at least they're taking
yeah,
stabs. Like, and any Tesla like thing you go to now, at least around here, there's solar panels, right?
oh
So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I think the issue with like the grid is like the same issue that we see all over society, right? It's like
We're energy vampires. We just need more energy, and
we need
and
more energy, but we've incentivized not the production of renewable energy
yeah.
sources or sustainable ones, right? Because of like the preponderance of wealth and where it's held,
Mhm.
right? Which affects our policy since like the 60s and 70s. So it's like we're 50 years
Oh, we're going
behind where
back into that. We're going back full circle to the beginning again. I see. Yeah,
no, but it all weaves together, right? So it's
it
like
does. It
we're taking
does.
steps. China's doing it, but like now, right?
Hmm.
Is like where we're at a point in time now where it's like we can't afford to like be like lagging on things like this.
No,
Nuclear
no.
energy is the safest energy for amount produced by
Hmm.
far, and by Canada has been essentially using that technology and selling it to like powering New York City, right?
Hmm.
That's not even where the money comes from. It's from the medical isotopes that they're using, right? So that's just like a byproduct of the money that those Canadian firms are
Yep.
making. Remember, I met the girl at that HPE thing, and we talked shop or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
what they're selling for like cobalt and stuff. I was like, holy cannoli! right?
Yeah,
Medical
yeah.
discoveries, energy like efficiency, and they produce so much energy. It's like a byproduct. They're selling it off to like the United States, right? We should be there, but we're not. Universities already have, some of the universities with great physics programs already have the ability for us to jumpstart that, you know? But they also know how to do things like win-win-win situations, right? Like they could actually build them like with public support where the public and the local community also benefits as well. You know, the grid, like where we are, you know, and it's like, it's sad to say, but it's like we have to start like looking at the reality of what's driving the behaviors that we have so we can change them. And I think we have like a lot of people that have been asleep and just, you know, cognitive apathy, or they don't want to do that. That's hard. It's like, no, it's not about finger blames and pointing guns. It's just saying like, look, like this is the reality, right? What you did 40, 50 years ago, that's now fully materialized and it sucks, right? We all hate it, right? So it's like, let's look at it and let's fix it. Let's rebuild it, you know, because it doesn't have to be this way. This is America, for heaven's sake. You know?
We were innovators, right? Do you feel like we've lost the innovation edge? Where, you know,
we've lost the intentional apathy, right? Of just like people, it's like why so much of the population doesn't use AI, right? And even in tech, a lot of the subpopulation doesn't use AI, right? But it's like we're not used to going and like figuring things out. It's like my dad always says, it's like the reason we won World War II is because when the tanks broke down, like our boys knew how to like go and like fix them.
Yeah.
All farm boys and stuff. And like on the other side, they waited for reinforcements and often just got, that is what made America. And that's essentially what we're being called to do. It's like, wake up, do it yourself, figure it out, use your brain.
That's a great message.
World experts here, you know, get after it. The future is ours. Let's build it together.
I like that. I'm going to put that maybe on LinkedIn. Maybe we'll do a clip on that. That's a great message, right? That's a message where I think there is so much gloom and doom out there right now, and you know, when you're surrounded around gloom and doom, it affects you. It takes you down as well too. Do I think we have problems? Yeah, we got problems. We got big problems, right? Can we fix it? Yeah, I really believe we can fix these things. And I think, you know, there is a threading of the needle. I mean, energy, it starts with energy. It starts with, you know, like I'm running more agents more on my little laptop now. I have enough memory on it. And, you know, do I really need to go to a data center to do stuff? Maybe for big stuff, but, you know, I could reduce my load and I can build stuff myself.
You need to just offer that, you know, for the public as a byproduct of all this like wealth that they're creating and getting and like, you know, and using that as like the instrument to disseminate. I mean, they need a role, right? Why shouldn't that be their role?
We should become the poster children for the new AI technology and by like, do it yourself. Like, you know, you have a picture of you like, right, with your arm rolled up like this right there. You build it like that, right? All right. Hey, listen. All right. Yeah.
So anyway, we get Sachi to talk about unis though. We should have him on the podcast.
Yeah.
We those consortiums and stuff, you know.
Yeah, let's get him. I mean, I like using Substack. It just seems more natural to me. Do you know if he's on Substack? You can ask him. But all you need to do is just create an account, and then I can invite him, and we can do it another time. But I don't even know when we're gonna do. When are we gonna do the next one? Once a week? I don't know what we're gonna do.
No, Thomas, I think we should do this. You know, you and I like start doing them. You know, and getting cool clips and making them like maybe we just have like little banters and we see if we can get like a 4 or 5 minute clip, right? Or whatever, and then it's like it goes from there. You know, and if you can send it to me, I'll start editing it too. I'll start uploading it to like my YouTube to socialize as well.
When this is, we're coming up on 30 minutes here, and I think we should probably cut it off because this was great. There's a lot of great things that we can talk about and continue on.
You know.
Right. Yeah. I'll send you the recording when I can download it. Probably have to go through like Google Drive or something like that because it's going to be big. So I can't put it on Discord. So
I'm putting it on my Drive too. That's just easier. I gotta find where the Google Meet videos saved. Yeah. Too. I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. All right. Take care.
It was good chatting with you. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.